morning. You are listening to the Dave Fox Home Remodeling Show. I'm Gary Demas, and I'm the president of Dave Fox Design Build Remodelers here in Columbus. Really glad to have everybody tuning in this morning on this November Sunday. And this morning I have Marc Mason with me. Marc, thanks a lot for being here.
Good morning, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, Marc, you're vice president of APCO. You've been with that company a long time, haven't you?
Almost 34 years now.
34 years.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
Doesn't feel like that.
You should have a big badge you're wearing around there. You know,
No.
No badges?
No badges.
Okay. All right. So, Marc, we're going to be talking about exteriors today. And so I'm sure any of our listeners, which there's a lot of them, exteriors are an important thing. We're getting into fall. We're getting into winter, bad weather. You might have some comments or ideas for people to maybe things to check. Who knows what we're going to talk about, right?
You got it. It'll go anywhere you want to go.
All right. Sounds good. So last week, if you had a chance to listen, I was talking to Greg Rice. He's our production manager, and we were talking about remodeling details. And Greg is he's a production pro. He's been in the business for many, many years. And you've known Greg for a long time.
I have, and he is a pro.
Yeah.
Guy understands it better than anybody in the business.
Yep. He's the guy that when I bought my last house, I had Greg go out and look at it.
Yep.
So I trust him. He's been in business a long time. So if you missed that show, or actually any previously broadcast show, our listeners can go to davefoxradio.com, and there they can listen to anything we've broadcast before, and they'll see a lot of your broadcasts too when we were talking about exteriors. So, Marc, I mentioned you're vice president of APCO. You've been there for 33 years, did you say? 33 years.
Yep.
That's great. And over that period of time, exteriors and products have changed a lot, I know.
No question about it.
But cedar's still cedar and redwood's still redwood, but everything else has changed a lot, right?
No question about it. Yep.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us, in case any of our listeners, probably all of them are familiar with you because APCO's been in business in Columbus for many, many years. They're one of the anchor companies here in exteriors, a trustworthy, great name for a business in Columbus. So in case any of our listeners don't know that much about APCO, give them a little rundown.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate that. So APCO was started in 1961.
Mm-hmm.
APCO started as a siding installer, first company to combine material with labor installation.
Mm-hmm.
So it was started off offering a package to builders to install siding. We grew from there. We got into other exterior products, windows, doors, gutters, and so forth. We did a little bit of roofing at for a period of time. We no longer do roofing, but we focused on the exterior.
Yeah.
And that's been our expertise. And we have done just nearly every application from multifamily to custom, residential primarily, and a little light commercial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I'm thinking siding, like countertops, there's items, plumbing fixtures, that you consider kind of a permanent. So if you're going to remodel, you're going to say, okay, when I change all my plumbing fixtures, that's going to last me 20, 25 years. So that's kind of the lifetime of a permanent type element. So with the many years that you guys have been in business, you're probably like us where you did siding back in the 70s and now it's ready for something else. So you go back to the same house and it's served its permanent time period, right?
It has.
So everything has a time and age.
It does.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've always said about windows, for example, it's one of the few components of a home that is permanent and operating.
Mm-hmm. True.
A lot of people, there's some people that don't like to open their windows that go from heating to air conditioning, but most people like on a nice day, spring or fall or summer, open up the windows, let the fresh air go in, come in.
Yeah.
And we always tell people, don't skimp on windows because they need to last as long as the envelope of your home lasts.
Yeah.
And we see windows being replaced sooner and sooner and sooner in the life of a home.
Mm-hmm.
And the technology has changed over the years,
Yeah.
and it has gotten better for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned sooner and sooner and sooner because, the vinyl replacements came on the scene many years ago, really.
Yes.
But they've seen so many changes in technology, in manufacturing strategies, the whole process materials, how they've developed the vinyls to be stronger and all this kind of stuff. So much has changed over those years. But, everyone gets in the show. And you get in the show with a real cheap product that looks flashy and you can sell it and make some money for a while until it starts falling apart, right?
That's exactly
Or
right.
you get in the show with a great product that's going to be more of a premium price, but it's one of the windows that you put in your home and you can trust that it's going to last for a lot of years.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. And there's no question about that. Some of the early generations of vinyl windows, for example, that product was changing every year.
Yeah.
Sealants, construction, weld techniques,
Sure.
components to the actual vinyl itself. So product have changed a great deal. And it's hard for people, if you're a homeowner, to keep up on that,
Yeah, exactly. So how can people reach you guys?
Two ways. The best place to check us out is online, APCO, APCO.com,
Okay.
or feel free to call. Our telephone number is 614-224-2345. And we've got residential consultants who are more than happy to come out and look and help diagnose situations with either the windows or your siding.
Yeah. And then you've got your pro exterior siding.
We do. Pro exterior. We specialize in a little higher level spec, if you will. Aluminum clad wood windows from Marvin and James Hardy fiber cement products for the siding.
Yeah. So I spent some time talking with one of your associates about the fiber cement siding.
Yes.
And that was a great conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's a product where, I mentioned cedar and redwood have been around for hundreds of years, and it's amazing how long those products can last if they're maintained well, isn't it?
Oh, there's no question.
Absolutely amazing.
Yes.
But then we've got products like the cedar or the Hardy that's available in like a cedar grain finish, and you can paint it, and it looks really authentic.
Absolutely.
But it's the cement-based product,
Right.
which woodpeckers don't like too much.
Woodpeckers don't like it.
Speaking of, it's funny because I've had several over the years, people come to me with cedar homes, and the woodpeckers have just been going nuts on their house, because bugs get in there and woodpeckers just start pecking. And I've dealt with that on a lot of other homes. But then just the other day, I heard this tap, tap, tap on my house, and I've got a stucco home, but it's got all the cedar trim. And I thought, what? Are the woodpeckers attacking my house? I said, that's just not fair. So I went out there, and sure enough, there's a red-bellied woodpecker going tap, 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 and I think I threw a rock at him or something to get him on. Go to the neighbor's house,
Find somebody else's
You never know
overhangs.
what's going to happen out
Yep.
there. Yeah. So I might be talking to you guys about replacing my trim with some Hardy.
Yep.
But I don't know. So we're going to be talking today about exteriors, right? And we're going to kind of focus on windows today?
Yeah,
or what,
let's talk
what are you
about
thinking?
windows. We've reached the time of year where homeowners are more concerned with, keeping their house comfortable.
Yeah.
And no matter, windows are wonderful. People love to be able to look outside, but windows always offer the least resistance to heat and cold.
Yeah.
And walls are very warm, ceilings are very warm, floors are very warm, but glass is glass is glass,
Yeah.
and that always offers the least resistance to heat and cold.
Yeah. It's got many beautiful characteristics and a few that we have to work around.
That's right.
So we're going to be talking about windows today. I'm really glad to have everybody listening in. So stay tuned, because in segment 2, 3, and 4, you're going to find out everything you need to know about windows with Marc Mason. We'll be right back. And good morning. Welcome back to the Dave Fox Home Remodeling Show. And today we are talking windows, right, Mark?
We're talking windows, Gary.
That's right. And I've got
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure, Mark. So Marc Mason here with me. He's Vice President of APCO right here in Columbus, a great name that's been in town for a lot of years. And we love working with you guys. We like partners that are good anchor names in Columbus.
Thank you.
And
Likewise.
A lot of the partners we work with have been here for many years, Mark. And so we like to deliver to Columbus really good products, great service, and a company that you can trust, right?
Yes, and we're in a great market, aren't we?
Yep, we are.
Great place to live.
Absolutely. And we got a great football team, right?
And we're having fun right now.
That's right. Love it. Okay, so Mark, just as we were finishing up the last segment, we said we're going to start to talk about windows, and let's get into that. So, with windows, you've got, obviously, we were talking about how permanent things are, and some wood products can last a heck of a long time if they're really well maintained. And I'm sure a lot of people listening today have old wood windows in their homes that have been there for many, many years. And maybe they can't open them because they run AC or heat year-round. But maybe they'd like to be able to open them, or maybe they're just tired of maintaining them. And, there's still tons of homes, aren't there, that have just the old wood windows.
A lot of windows.
Okay, so if someone's wrestling with that, what's your advice to them?
Well, I would say this. With wood windows in particular, there's a couple things to look at. Number one, if the wood on the outside is deteriorating to the point where it shows evidence of rot, or the paint is flaking, where it's difficult to repair, I would say that you've got a window that's a candidate for replacement.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean the entire house needs replaced, but certainly it should be evaluated, because once a window starts to rot, it will rot very quickly.
Yeah.
A lot of the older windows, a lot of the older homes, the wood has held up very well because it was original growth lumber. Some of the newer wood windows tend to go bad faster than the older ones, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. But the first thing to look for is wood rot on the outside. And if it just, you're putting money into scraping and painting and scraping and painting, look at setting that money aside and consider replacement. Mm-hmm. So wood rot is probably the first thing to look at.
Yeah.
You mentioned operation. If the window doesn't open and close. Two things. Number one, that could be a safety concern for egress purposes, that type of thing. But secondly, just pure enjoyment. Open up the windows, let the outside in, fresh air, so forth. So that's another consideration. The third thing that happens oftentimes is your window fogs up. And that could also suggest that it might be time to evaluate the windows and look at replacement.
Because the insulation value there is a problem then, right, with the fogging?
Correct. Mm-hmm. You don't always have to replace the entire window with what we call a seal failure or foggy windows, but sometimes you can get away with replacing just the glass or the sash. Yeah. So again, look at those three things. Number one, rot, paint adhesion. Look at operation. Do my windows open and close? Look at foggy panes. And then, if the other thing is, if your curtains blow and on a cold, windy day, that might be another good sign to have your windows evaluated.
Exactly. Yeah, you mentioned the term the old growth lumber, and that kind of rung a bell with me because I spent 4 years out in Portland, Oregon, years ago, and out there that's big Douglas fir country, right?
Big time.
So fir is a great exterior wood, and a great building wood. It's very strong, fairly lightweight. And I learned all about old growth and new growth out there. And it was interesting because I could see examples. I can remember I was working on this one project, and there were these old bleachers, and they were made out of old growth Douglas fir. And the grain was really tight, really close together, very dense, because those trees had to compete with other trees that were right next to them for light, and they grew slow but strong. But out there they have clear-cut a lot of sides of mountains and got a lot of Doug fir out of there. And then when they replant the trees, they space them further apart so they get a lot of light so they grow quickly. Well, what happens is now those growth rings are a lot further apart, so the wood's not nearly as strong. And I never really understood that until I was out there and just kind of saw that firsthand.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So the old growth stuff is like gone.
Yeah.
And now we're just getting the newer growth. So even the woods that used to last many, many years don't last as long now because it's newer growth.
That's correct.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of the clad wood windows that are made today, they take wood pieces and finger joint them. They take just random pieces and they'll finger joint them, glue them up together, and then put a nice veneer over top of it. The utilization of wood today is so precise and so specific.
Yeah.
And that's how they're able to stay competitive in most cases.
Yeah, and it's good on the hand that you're using all the material, right? You're not wasting stuff.
You're not wasting
so that's
it.
great, and we encourage that highly.
Now, our main vendor will take their leftover sawdust and heat their buildings in the wintertime.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay, so what's next? We've got, we talked about, of course, replacing the wood windows, and then there's so many different types of new window products that can go in. I know the vinyls, if you're pulling out wood windows in an older home, the sizes are going to be all over the map, right? You're not going to go down and buy stock windows that fit in there. So the vinyls are so great because they're all custom sized.
Yes, that is correct, and that's it's really important. When you replace your windows, you don't want to take a stock window and put it in a custom hole. You don't want to lose daylight. You don't want to compromise your trims, both your inside trims and your outside trims. Yeah. And it is true. Almost all vinyl windows that are used in replacement are custom sized to fit the opening.
Yeah, and then we have the customers, obviously, that want to replace it with a wood window. So what do you do in those scenarios, Marc?
Once again, the days of standard sizes and compromising around a standard size window are over. Our wood window manufacturers all custom sized to the opening that is currently there, which makes it beautiful when you're finishing or wanting to keep your existing casing on the inside. You don't lose any daylight. Your outside wall is not compromised. Your inside wall is not compromised.
Yeah, and you mentioned the casing inside because there's some beautiful homes in the Columbus area that have just beautiful ornate wood moldings that you don't want to mess with.
That's right.
Yeah.
People in a lot of historic districts and even outside of our historic districts, they have beautiful casings that are bigger than our standard 2 1/4 or 3-inch casings. They're just multi-profiled and they look beautiful. You don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
So you guys are able to come in there, remove the old sash and frames, and have a custom size unit go right in there and fit that casing perfectly.
That's exactly right.
And then
it sounds much easier than it is to do.
Yeah.
But all of our windows are sized, so if you're wanting to keep your interior casing, you can do that. We leave it in place. We're able to surgically remove the original window and install the new window without disturbing the inside casing.
Sure. And then there's scenarios where the custom sizes are usually there's a little upcharge on those, right? So they've got the stock sizes, which is pretty plentiful, and then if you need a custom size, there's a little upcharge on that. But a lot of times you guys can get the stock sizes close enough that if there's just a little bit of an inch or two here, that the new casings will cover that and nobody will know the difference.
That's exactly right, Gary.
Yeah, that works really well. So again, I'm talking to Marc Mason this morning, and Marc, so glad to have you on this morning. We're talking about windows. We're going to take a quick break, Marc, and after the break, let's talk about some of the thermal properties of windows. So we'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Dave Fox Home Remodeling Show. We are glad you're tuning in on this November morning here in the big Buckeye State with a great football team. And I've got Marc Mason with me this morning. Marc, thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you, Gary. Go Bucks.
Yeah, go Bucks. So, Marc, you're with APCO. And we were talking about how, it's a great company. You've been here a long time. You've been with the company for 33 years. You should have APCO stamped on your forehead, right? I should have Dave Hawk stamped on my forehead. But anyhow,
or tattoo or bruise or something like
tattoo.
that.
Yeah, let's go get tattoos this week, all right? I'm not on my forehead. So we've been talking about windows, and we've talked, in case anybody's just tuning in now, Mark, we've talked about really some of the wood products out there and how that's changed. Even the wood itself has changed over the years because of new growth versus old growth. And then we've talked about the vinyl windows and the wood windows and the installation options if someone has old windows and wants to replace them. But, when I'm thinking about it, we were talking about how the products years ago have changed so much, even in the vinyl windows. So when vinyl windows first came on the market, obviously the vinyl was a different quality than it is today because we had so much time to work with it, and the chemists have tweaked it, and it just performs so much better today. So it could be even people have windows that were put in years ago that just aren't adequate and need a vinyl window that needs changed.
We see that
Do you
a
run
lot.
into that? Do you?
We see that a lot.
Okay.
The early generations of vinyl windows are prime candidates for replacement.
Yeah, I'm sure. So we've talked about all that stuff. One thing we haven't talked about yet is kind of the thermal properties of windows. And you did mention that glass, beautiful, lets the outdoors in, but it's not real energy efficient on its own, is it?
It's not.
No.
Not at all. Glass. One nice thing today, we have insulated glass.
Yeah.
A lot of the older homes had single pane glass, and people went from a single pane unit to adding a storm window to it.
Yeah.
Today, almost all of the insulated glass that comes into this market is what we call dual pane, 2 pieces of glass. Most of the glass has a coating on it today. There's different types of glass called low E, which is low emissivity. It's a metallic coating on the glass that helps warm up the glass, if you will. It helps reflect ultraviolet rays and boost the R value. R value is the resistance of heat and cold transfer. Walls, as you know, are very warm. You can get a 2x6 wall with insulation.
Yeah.
And it makes it very warm. You can do the same thing for ceilings. Glass, we're about an R3.
Yeah.
Even if we put, argon gas between the panes, glass is glass, and it's transparent, and it is going to be the item in your home, your envelope, that's going to allow the most heat and cold transfer.
Yeah. So, Mark, when you go to triple pane so that you've got 2 dead air spaces, and even with argon gas, what does that do for R value?
It does boost it
Does it?
ever so slightly.
Okay, but not that much.
Not dramatically.
Okay.
It also does a couple of other things that can be a challenge for windows. Number one, it adds a lot more weight,
Right.
Which sometimes will affect the long-term operation of the window. And the other thing that it increases the likelihood of a seal failure. A seal failure is when the seal fails and fog or moisture appears inside the glass. So you've just got a lot more area around the perimeter of the glass to seal. So
Yeah. It sounds like you're not a real fan of triple glazing.
I don't think it's that great.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that appropriate for our market.
Yeah. Now, years ago, I know that triple glaze also provided a lot of sound deadening. But
No
now I
question.
think there's new techniques for that, right? With
Absolutely.
double pane.
Yep. So, again, I think for our market area, dual pane, low E, argon gas filled is a very appropriate glass specification.
Yeah. Yep. We were talking about the quality of windows and how everybody gets into the game, right? So even today, where we've got really excellent vinyl products, and they can have a wood grain texture on them, they can be colored to look very nice and operate really well. But you've got a big quality range still.
You certainly do.
You can make a cheap window look pretty, and you can sell at a good price, and it's not going to perform that well. So how does one of our listeners that really doesn't know that much about windows, you can go online, you can read all this stuff. Number one, you're not sure what you can believe, what you're reading, right? And number two, there's a lot of times so much information, you don't really know how to sort it all out and figure out what's important to me and what isn't. What price range is this in? There's just so much info out there that people can get really kind of confused, and after doing a lot of research, still may not know a lot more than when you started. So how would you advise somebody that's thinking about windows? They want to do something. They want to do the right thing. They don't want to spend too much money, but they don't want to, buy something that's cheap that's not going to perform. What do they do?
Terrific question. Really terrific question. First off, I would encourage you to research yourself. There is a wealth of information available online to the point, to your point, that it becomes confusing. What do I believe? What about this? What about that? You can get really deep into the weeds with information with regards to windows.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would suggest: trust the professionals.
Yeah.
Find an advocate, find someone in the industry. It doesn't have to be in the window business. It could be an architect. It could be a remodeler. Trust those experts. They know. They've got experience. They can direct you. The other thing, if you do want to talk to somebody in the window business, talk to somebody that is not exclusive to a brand.
That's a good point.
Talk to somebody that's not exclusive to a vinyl window. Talk to somebody that has vinyl windows, has fiberglass windows, has aluminum clad windows, composites. Work with some, because every home is unique. And yes, there's a lot of similarities between homes, but your home is unique, and you don't have to be tied to a specific type of window. So trust somebody that can offer a wide variety of solutions.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because really a lot of times clients, when they're thinking about doing a project like this, any kind of remodeling or even buying a car or whatever, probably one of the first things that comes to their mind is, okay, who of my friends have just done this, and who can I call? Because they know they can trust their friend, right?
Yep.
Their friend doesn't have any ulterior motives. They're not getting commission on anything. They feel like they can go to that person and get honest feedback, because that's what people want. And most people don't want to spend hours and hours researching something to death, because still, even after all that, you don't have all your answers or your questions answered. So they first think, okay, I'll go to a friend, talk to them, and they can't think of anybody. But sometimes they're afraid to go to a company because they think they're going to be biased. But really, I know our people are not at Dave Fox, and I know your people are not.
No.
We've been in business a long time. Our track record means way more to us than misleading someone to get a sale. We would never do that, never threaten our reputation or our track record.
Yeah.
So we're going to give that client honest feedback on something that we know is going to, 5 years later, they're going to love just as much as the day goes in. And you guys are the same way.
Absolutely. Our culture, your culture, and is not to pressure people into a buying decision, rather than present the options, find the best fit, and then install in a very, very sound application.
Yeah. Okay, so with windows, like anything, there can be problems, and maybe some of our clients have put some windows in not that long ago, and they're having some issues. We're going to talk about some of those issues, some of the problems they might run into, and I want to get your expert advice, Mark, on what these clients can do to maybe troubleshoot that or correct it or figure out what they can do to get that fixed. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. You are listening to the Dave Fox Home Remodeling Show. We are here every Sunday morning at 8, and we talk about home remodeling here. And we talk about a variety of subjects. And if you go to DaveFoxRadio.com, there you can see a full list of all the broadcasts that we've done over the last few years, and we've probably covered about every remodeling topic you can think of, huh, Mark?
You probably have.
Yeah.
I appreciate you having me back.
Sure.
Thank you.
So we just invite our listeners to go to DaveFoxRadio.com. There you can see a list of all the previously broadcast shows. Let's see. Last week I was talking to Greg Rice. We talk about remodeling details. That's a great show. Greg has been in the industry a long time. And whenever I have Greg on, we always talk about just remodeling in general and houses and how they're built and problems people may run into and There's all kinds of stuff like that because Greg's been in the industry a long time. He knows all the stuff.
He does.
Yeah.
He certainly does.
So just like Marc knows all the stuff about windows and siding because you've been in the industry a long time. And in case you're just tuning in, at the end of the last segment, Marc, we were talking about how a lot of times people, when they're faced with the job or situation where they have to replace windows or siding or whatever on their home, usually they try to think of a friend that's been through it that they can get advice from if they're not that familiar with it themselves. They can go online and research and stuff. But really, my advice, your advice, is don't be afraid to go to a reputable company that's been in business a long time, that's here to guard their reputation, not just to sell a product out the door by telling people falsehoods. We're going to be honest with people about the products we sell. We're going to steer them in the right direction because we want them to be just as happy 5 and 10 years later as they are the day we sell it, right?
Well said, Gary.
Okay. So now that we've got that out of the way, and now that all of our listeners know you can trust these two companies, we're going to talk about some of the issues that people can run into, some of the problematic issues they can run into with their windows. And I'm sure you've seen over the years probably about everything that there is to see.
I think so.
What do you think is one of the top on the list?
Well, the first one that I would suggest would be the seal failure. If you have windows with insulated glass and they're foggy or you can't quite get the windows clean, you probably have what's called a seal failure. If your windows are less than 20 years old, you may have a warrantable situation. So the good news is you don't have to replace the entire window. Rather, you can just replace the glass, or in some cases, replace the sash. So the most common failure with windows is the seal has gone bad. And if the window gets foggy or you see moisture or sometimes a little rusty looking in between the panes, you have probably what's called a seal failure. Mm-hmm. And if it's a newer window, the likelihood of it having some warranty on it is still a very good possibility. Mm-hmm. Most of the windows that are manufactured today in the vinyl category have lifetime warranties. Most of the windows have an identification label on it that would say when it's built and basic specifications about the window itself.
Right. Okay, so seal failures are obviously and we've talked about how when products first come on the market, there's some experimentation going on, and there's engineering that keeps going on that makes them better and better. So some of the early double pane glass seals, the engineering just wasn't quite up to par like it is today.
That is correct.
Yeah, those windows can fail.
Yep.
And I know it's cost some companies a lot of money to go back and cover warranty issues on those failures.
There's very few window manufacturers that were immune from that situation.
Yeah. But now the products have gotten better. The engineering's gotten better.
Sealants are much better.
Yeah.
The components have gotten much better.
Yeah. So what would you say is a good lifetime now on a thermal insulated window?
Oh, I would say that it's going to, like I said, most manufacturers will warrant it for lifetime. Mm-hmm. One of the things that you have to look into closely on the warranties is warranties aren't transferable.
Okay.
Sometimes when you buy a home and you replace the windows in it, and then you sell the home, that warranty's not transferable. Mm-hmm. In some cases, when it is transferable, but it goes from a lifetime warranty to a 10-year warranty. Mm-hmm. So read carefully the warranty elements of your product. Yeah.
But if you're going to buy a really good quality product today, it's going to be done with a really good skill, good techniques, good materials, good engineering, and it's going to last a long, long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You could easily expect it to be beyond 30 years.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so what's one of the other main issues that you run into?
A lot of times weather strippings fail, and you'll get they'll tear, they'll rip, they'll deteriorate. Sometimes those need replaced. Mm-hmm. And really, there's two aspects of a window. There's the thermal part of it from a heat and cold transfer. The other part of it is an air intrusion,
Okay.
air infiltration standpoint. If you've got great thermal properties, but your curtains still blow, you've got a weather stripping issue.
Yeah.
And you don't want that to happen.
Yeah. And when you speak of that, it reminds me because I've installed a lot of windows over the years, and there's not only when you're replacing a window and you're taking out the old sash, especially the ones that had the lead weights in them, so you got all that extra weight or space in there.
Yep.
So you have this hollow space, and then this beautiful tight window goes in there, and it's as tight as the dickens, and no air is going to get through it. But if you don't deal with that hollow space, you got big issues too, right?
Great point. It's not just the window itself; it's the insulation around the window.
Yeah.
And that is you mentioned the old weight pulley windows, double hung windows.
Yeah.
And those cavities today, we block them, we foam them, and we foam all the way around that window. And you should do that because that is maybe a bigger source of air infiltration than the window itself.
Yeah, you can have the best window on earth and still lose tons of air around that
Terrific
thing if
point.
that's not dealt with. Okay, so we got the good old air infiltration issue that we need to nail. So now that we got that done, what's any other issues that people typically run into?
Just the, obviously we talked about the exterior of the window. If your window is rotting, if the paint just won't stay on, you should have somebody come out and help evaluate the window.
Yeah.
Because windows have a lifetime, and it might be best to look at that window and see if it is a candidate for replacement.
Yeah. Mark, I'm thinking of an issue. Typically, when you see that exterior rot on casing, wood casing, wood exterior trim, or the wood sill, that window needs replaced, and I always recommend replacing it. I remember not long ago, there was this gigantic custom bay window that had all this ornate glass in it, and the thing was just mammoth size, custom, and it had a few of these rotted areas. And when the guys told me about it on the phone, I'm thinking, well, we'll just price it up, to replace that window and see if the homeowner wants to do that. I went out and looked at it, and I looked at that window, and I thought, oh my gosh, it would cost a fortune to replace that window. So I got to thinking, what can I do to salvage it? So there were just a few particular spots where the wood, like the exterior sill, was rotted on a couple corners, and one of the sashes kind of had just one area that was just rotted. So what we did in that case to save that thing, because it cost a fortune to replace it, and even if you replaced it, it wouldn't look like that window did because it was old. It was like a piece of art. So we filled those areas with an epoxy type mixture, and then painted it real good just to keep any water from getting into that again, hoping that we could salvage that baby for a while.
Yes, that is possible.
Yeah.
It takes a good person, good skilled person to be able to do that. But in situations like that, absolutely, that's a good approach.
Okay, Mark, it's great talking with you today. We're talking with Marc Mason from APCO. This is Gary Demas from Dave Fox Remodeling. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. I want you to know that we're always here every Sunday morning at 8.